This is Queer Cinema Catchup. I'm Allison.
And I'm Joe.
And this is the podcast where we talk about movies, TV shows, and miscellaneous topics through a queer lens.
And today we will be talking about our Sundance experience. Allison is wearing a 2020 fashion from her experience volunteering at the Sundance Film Festival. Oh, I guess I do have a Sundance hat, but I'm too lazy to grab it.
Oh, Joe. Yeah, so today is going to be a slightly different kind of episode where we're not focusing on one movie. We are going to talk about three films that we did not unfortunately see in person in Sundance, though Joe has some in-person Sundance stories, as do I, from previous years. We'll chat about those a little bit, but we'll also discuss three films that premiered at this year's festival, and they were Twinless, Sally, which is a documentary, and Plainclothes. How do you want to start? Do you want to dive into one of those in particular?
Let's end on Twinless.
Okay.
Start with Sally.
All right. Plainclothes in the center.
Plainclothes.
And then as a palate cleanser, we'll tell a Sundance. We have to tell a Sundance story in between. And if you don't have one, you got to make it up.
I won the Palme d'Or. Which
Wrong
is
festival.
Oh, sorry. That's right. The Cannes episode.
Was this your first time, by the way, watching a Sundance film during the festival remotely?
Yes.
So this started.
I thought we were starting stories between movies, but
I guess you're right. But I feel like it'd be kind of cool to explain.
But I feel a story coming on.
I feel like we should explain how we were able to access these movies. And I want to encourage other people to try, although maybe they won't do it anymore. And we'll get into why a little bit later. But yeah, back during the pandemic, they started to offer the programming remotely, and it's really cool. You can purchase individual tickets or a big pass if you want, and then you get the login information, and you can download the Sundance app onto your TV. Although back when I did this in 2020, I think I had to like Chromecast it to my TV. It wasn't as simple. And then we got to watch like Sundance ads. We got to see everybody who sponsors the festival. There was a reminder of who. Of the area where Sundance is in Utah, the Native American heritage of the area, kind of what are those called when you acknowledge the land that you stand upon?
That's a good word for it.
But there's like whatever that is, there's like a word for that. And then the director would pop on and give a little intro to the film, so it felt like you were almost at the festival. Would you agree?
Yeah. Did you take notes?
Oh yeah.
So I asked if you took notes because I remember the Twinless director introduction, but I don't remember the Sally or the Plainclothes introductions.
I did take notes on those.
Okay.
Sally is a 2025 documentary directed by Christina Costantini that delves into the life of Sally Ride, the first American woman to journey into space. It takes a look at her public achievements and private life, focusing on her 27-year relationship with her partner, Tam O'Shaughnessy, and it was a closeted queer lesbian relationship that she was not open about during her lifetime, largely because she was so successful in a male-dominated field, and NASA was very much it was the first time they had opened up the candidate pool to women and minorities, and so the movie sort of posited that being emblematic of being a first in such a old-fashioned field made it even harder to sort of express oneself. The stakes were much higher, but then also the film delved into her psychology and suggested that there was something about being seen as like a positive role model that she didn't want to give up either. So it was an interesting blend of the external and internal pressures. It premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, as we know. And it was produced by National Geographic Documentary Films and will be available for wider audiences later this year. So check it out when it arrives. What did you think of this documentary?
I liked it. I thought it was compelling to learn about Sally's life. And yes, like going into aerospace is very like male dominated field of work. So I feel like a lot of what she had to do was compete with a lot of like men. I feel like she like I wonder how much like she felt obligated to like act a certain way, or if that's like how she is normal. I don't know if she had like a business way about the way she like dealt with her life, and then a personal way she dealt with her life.
Well, she interestingly didn't even want to come out, so she ends up quitting. She's the first woman in space, for American woman in space. The movie definitely covered that. I don't remember. I feel like it was the first. She was the first. Let's get this right. Who was the first woman in space?
Well, U.S. woman in space.
Well, yeah, but I want to know. No. The first woman was Valentina Tereshkova,
right.
but yeah, so she was the first American woman in space. But so they delve into that journey. She gets married to another fellow astronaut, even though she eventually begins seeing Tam, who's someone she's known since childhood. Mm-hmm. And Sally also had a previous lesbian relationship in college with another woman whose name I'm forgetting. And then when the Challenger explosion happens, it sort of comes out that there were a lot of mistakes and mismanagement happening within NASA, and it made Sally very angry, and she ended up quitting or like leaving the program. And even after, in the aftermath, and in all the subsequent years, when she started her own kind of STEM education group for girls, she still didn't come out, even though her Tam, her long-term partner, had been much more publicly out until she began dating Sally. And then the other interesting wrinkle was it wasn't really familial pressure, because they kind of explained the family was, I think, like Nordic or from a culture that doesn't really talk about feelings. And they interviewed her mom.
Yes.
I think I took down the quotes.
Hilarious.
Let me see if I could find what she said. I can't find what it was, but it was sort of like, well, why would we talk about that? Just like very, of course I knew.
Do Control F, and then you can search mom.
I didn't put the little attribution to the quote, mom.
During these movies, you were like typing away.
I'm sure I could find it. 1 second. Okay, so this is the interviewer, or the director probably, and her mother, Joyce Ride. I think she, as in Sally, was kind of closed-mouthed about how she felt. Why do you think that was? Joyce Ride. It's none of your business. She was my number one child. She has 2 children.
Yes, that line.
I don't mean to laugh at she was still alive, which is amazing. Interviewed in the documentary, an elderly woman who's lost her daughter to cancer, but it was very, the lines that they selected to highlight of the mother were very, they told you a lot about who she was and what kind of environment it must have been growing up, like maybe high pressure.
Matter of fact, but then you also don't really express your feelings, and just to be very blunt.
Yeah. Okay, here's another quote from the mom, though, really quickly. Why don't you like talking about feelings? That's the director. If I knew how I felt about feelings, I would probably not tell you.
She was hilarious.
And what was most crazy of all, not crazy, but it turns out...
Which isn't revealed until near the end of the documentary.
Okay, but I have my suspicions.
So did I. Visually, did they interview her very much earlier on?
No, not really. I think she was just in a couple photographs, but...
They held off until near the end, and then they had an interview, and then visually, you kind of suspect that her sister might be queer also.
Yes.
And then that was like probably the most compelling part of the documentary for me.
I wanted to see a story about that.
I'm upset that they waited till the end of the documentary to reveal this. The sister comes on, and she had been a pastor for like a Protestant church or something.
I don't remember the denomination.
And then when she was very like out with her.
Well, her partner was also involved in a church. I don't know if it was the same church or a different church, but they both had to step away.
They had to step away. And then...
But they were out even in their family.
Right.
And then at the same time, Sally is with Tam. But they come to family events, but they never talk about it.
Never talk about it.
And Tam's like, this is your sister. She's gay too. Don't you want to talk to her?
Do you have that quote?
Yeah, I'm sure I do.
Because that really struck me too, is when Tam was like, she's your sister. Why don't you talk to her?
Okay. Tam would say, will you please talk to Bear? You're both with women. Talk to her. She's your sister. And then Tam said, I didn't understand that. I didn't get it. And this was about where they almost split up for good. And it was actually really endearing because they had this disconnect about being open versus being closeted long after she was a full-time astronaut. And they almost break up. They're having this argument. And then Tam describes Sally as standing up on her toes and walking into the kitchen like during this fight, which is something that she had done as a kid that Tam had noticed. And she said it was so cute.
Tam saw Sally?
Yeah.
Okay.
Was something she liked about her as a kid, like noticed she was, do you know you're walking on your toes? And that's kind of what struck up their childhood friendship on the tennis court or whatever. So she does that during this giant argument, and she says, I realized I loved her and we would figure it out. Balance between what we both needed. We couldn't change the world, but we loved each other and wanted to be together through hell or high water, happy together for many years. So it's just very moving to me because Sally didn't come out until basically she kind of said while she was passing away from cancer, Tam said, what do you want me to say in your obituary about who I am? And she said, you can decide. So she kind of allowed her, she gave her the permission to tell the story basically. But up until then, she decided not to come, she wouldn't come out. And Tam decided at a certain point that that was okay with her because she loved her so much.
I mean, this was when she was in the, like, dealing with aerospace, she was there in like the 70s and 80s. And she was a woman in a male dominated industry. And there were definitely like queer people in existence, but probably like not as public facing. And then to like work so hard to get into aerospace in the first place is like really challenging.
I mean, I think it's like twofold because it's sort of like you can't mess up. If you are different and you mess up, that there's a huge target on your back already. There's just way less forgiveness. But at the same time, she was really adored and inspirational. And so people don't want to give that up
Was
either.
she adored?
It seemed like in the beginning, in a way that was probably annoying to her, both addictive and annoying, because it seemed like she got all this attention. She was the first. It was exciting. It was thrilling. But then a lot of the questions.
Family?
Yeah, astronaut.
At work, though, I got the interpretation that people kind of feared her and found her very intimidating, actually. And she was very competitive.
I meant from the like outside world.
Okay, yeah.
In. Yeah, at work, it seemed like that was an interesting revelation because apparently she was very good at the, what would you call it?
Was it like the robotic arm thing?
Yeah,
and
the
she
robotic arm.
She purposely sabotaged it for one other person to see if they'd be able to fix it and solve it.
And because she was the best at it, so it was sort of her path forward to getting selected as that coveted astronaut spot. And the person who she did that to is quoted saying something like, I didn't know if she was like playing around with me, wanting to test me to see what I could do, or if she just really, really wanted that spot and was being underhanded. And it was really interesting to me. Should I tell you what the director, Christina, had to say before the film started?
Yeah.
In third grade at her school, they drew a mural, all of her classmates, and they had to draw their heroes. And she drew or painted Sally Ride, and they had a little photograph of the mural, which was very cool. And later on, she found out when Sally died, and she learned about the fact that she was dating this woman for years and years and years and never came out. She thought, wow, it's so interesting that she had to hurt those closest to her for the benefit of people she'll never meet. And so she really wanted this film to be told primarily through Tam O'Shaughnessy's point of view, and tell the love story. And I feel like they did a pretty good job, but I will say it was kind of like bifurcated, where the beginning was really about her rise in the astronaut program, which was fascinating. And then the love story part came second. And there were also times where like they kind of delved into the college romance of it all. And then the first time they had the steak dinner when they were friends, and they both kind of felt romantic sparks. But then they like left that by the wayside to tell you the whole story of her first mission to space and everything. And then they went into the romance, which I thought was an interesting structure.
It was. Yeah. Like I said, I found the ending to be most compelling about the revelation of the sister. I mean, you can only, I guess, expand on that. And Sally passed away of cancer, so she was not available to participate in this documentary. So I think that definitely hurt it, but I thought it was a very fine and well done tribute to her legacy.
Yes, I agree. And I definitely learned things I didn't know about the space program, about Sally Ride, and about the time period, which I thought was, what you want from a documentary. You want to learn and you want to be moved. And this does both. Okay, it's time for Sundance story.
Yes, regale us with a tale.
Oh, I was gonna say it's your turn.
Have you told one yet?
I just feel like I was talking a lot, so I feel like you should tell a story.
I don't know. I think I shared all I went to Sundance last year.
Oh, that's right.
For 2024, and I saw, because we did.
Or a film festival story. Or just a story. If you were going to make a documentary, what would you make it on?
I would do it about the coyotes in Los Angeles.
Really? Should we look to see if there's a documentary about that yet? And if not, should we jump on it?
No, I don't see anything.
All right.
Well, there's a video called Coyote Conflict in Los Angeles, and it's 25 minutes long, but I shan't be clicking on it.
You should probably do it about the ones that live up at Griffith and are very docile and just kind of sit there and stare at you. Have you seen them?
Yes. I went up for a while. I was really getting into doing morning Griffith hikes, and the reason I stopped doing them so early at sunrise is I was like at the very top of Griffith, and there's this way that you turn around the hill and you walk through the neighborhood, and I like love walking through the neighborhood, but I turned like on this trail, and far in the distance there were a pack of coyotes, and I've never seen a pack of coyotes before.
So was this in the neighborhood or?
No, it was like, it's like literally, you know, when like the road splits and you can go up to the actual observatory or you can go down to the like homes. It was like that. I like turned that corner and they were like pretty far in the distance, but they just like looked at me and I was like, oh, they probably will just run away. So like I was walking towards them a little bit and I was like, this is insane. And I just like turned back around and left.
That's crazy.
Because usually coyotes are on their own. I think for the most part, they don't hang out in packs like that. So
you were a little bit alarmed.
I got out of there. So that's my Sundance story about my
You'd make a documentary about coyotes.
That.
Okay, well, that was great. All right, let's go to Plainclothes.
Set in 1990s New York and inspired by true events, a working class undercover officer is tasked with entrapping and apprehending gay men, only to find himself drawn to one of his targets.
Well, it was directed by Carmen Emmy. Carmen Emmy. I'm really bad with pronunciation. I'm probably butchering everyone's names. Carmen Emmy, which is his first feature-length directorial debut. It starred Tom Blythe as Lucas, who was the undercover officer, and then Russell Tovey as Andrew, his primary target / lover. And also, I think it's important to note it won the special jury award for ensemble cast.
So the order that we watched these movies, Plainclothes was the first one we watched, and then we watched Twinless, and then we watched Sally.
I think so, yeah.
And Plainclothes definitely felt, was impressed by it, but it definitely felt like a smaller movie, just in terms of like the setting, like the cast, like it felt very contained in a way, but I thought it was really well done and well acted. I think the romance was a little questionable and felt a little forced. Also, the situation of the undercover cops, I didn't find as compelling and realistic and was not explored very well.
I feel like it was an interesting film because, yeah, the small scale of it was a very small cast, so I understand what you're saying. And it was like a very tightly constructed script, which ultimately really paid off. But in the beginning, there were certain things that were happening that I thought it was confusing accidentally. It was confusing on purpose. It was told in two timelines. Mm-hmm. And the cop element of it all, it felt
just
a little contrived.
It was contrived, and it was just a reason to like move the plot forward without having any interest in exploring what it actually meant to be an undercover cop in those times. Like I thought we were going to be much more focused on that. And then we knew going into it that it was also a romance. So it's like, oh, how is this going to work out? And then so much so that like in like the last third of the movie, they kind of ditched the whole undercover cop element.
Well, he sort of like rejects his role, which I appreciate. I think it was a way to make the stakes even higher in terms of like, and putting into sharper relief the challenges of being gay at that time. Because in addition to all the challenges of coming out or not having accepting family, there's also the element of this was a time where there were even harsher legal and social repercussions.
Right, and how awful and messed up, like
extremely.
In like the 90s when it was like more difficult to be a queer person, and then you're like you're in a restroom and someone approaches you.
I know they make eyes at you in the mall court.
They're setting it up. It's not like these people are
court.
Yeah, it's like they are initiating it.
And what if that was somebody's first? It could be like somebody's like, "Whoa, I guess I'm gonna try this out." Like I don't know, and then they're under arrest. And then there was the information that was snuck in the beginning of the script where most of these guys just paid the fine. They never show up in court because then their name will be part of a record, or their family will know that they were there and they'll know the truth about them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the whole thing is extremely messed up. And they did show like real footage of like camera entrapment, which also weird.
Why go through all that plot wise when it seems like to start off it's like, it seemed to be like it was gonna be geared more towards like these victims, but instead it like
I think
turned into it didn't even seem like the undercover cop, like, yes, he was like conflicted about his own identity. He's a gay man, or at least a queer man.
Yeah.
And then he falls for like
an older
man that he was like supposed to catch. And then
but he decides not to.
Because
of the attraction. I guess I would have been okay with. I think we had a problem with the first part of this movie. We actually really liked it in the end. Yeah. I know it doesn't sound like it right now, but in the very beginning, when it's this cop element, they meet. It's supposed to be this like electric moment of like love at first sight, basically, or at least lust at first sight. And for me, I was just kind of like, why this guy? You know, like why is Tom Blythe this like young, beautiful man? Not that there's anything wrong with the other actor. Like he has
dad vibes.
Yeah, just kind of like it just didn't make sense. I mean, but then later on,
That's
remember
a hot quality. I say that in a good way. Dad vibes.
Oh, I will say I came around to it because I felt like he was looking for a paternal figure.
Yeah,
because his father had passed away. Also, was a confusing element of the story because of the two timelines. Like I didn't know if the dad was alive or dead.
Wait, we didn't introduce. Using mustaches as a tool to show when it's the present and when it's the future.
Yeah, the mustache. And that was the part. It wasn't so much that we couldn't tell there were two timelines. We just didn't know if it was before or after the main events of the plot. But I think that was intentional.
Yeah.
Anyway, let me quickly tell you what the director had to say about the film. The reason he incorporated police is because in his own youth, when he was struggling to come out, his brother was becoming a police officer. So this would have been around the same time. So there's a personal connection. And thinking about my own coming out experience is how Lucas, the main character, was born. He said this is a film about what happens when you police your feelings. And then the beginning of the movie quoted, I think, part of the law enforcement code of ethics: honest in thought and deed, both in my personal and official life. Was not fast enough to write down all of it. Hang on. Honest in thought and deed, in both my personal and official life, I will be exemplary in obeying the laws of the land and the regulations of my department. Which, for someone who's queer, is one, difficult if that's against the law, and then two, if you're entrapping people, is that being honest in thought and deed? Is my other reaction to that quote.
No.
Agreed. And then one more complaint, and then we'll go into what we loved about this movie. When they finally do meet up outside of the police life, the two times the first time that they do in a movie theater, beautiful set. I don't know where they filmed it. It was beautiful. But then they go and they try and like chat in a back room of the theater, and they're probably going to hook up, but the main character is very nervous because he has no experience, and the other his lover's very like understanding, like, oh, we don't have to do anything, we can just talk. And it's like that part was all sweet, but then they like kind of make a noise and someone hears them and they run outside. And then I don't know what happened, but it just felt very like forced. Like again, I didn't feel the chemistry. I don't know if you agree.
There was lack of chemistry. I say like visually they're like both very attractive men. I'm like, yes, this should work, but there definitely was a lack of chemistry.
I think that might have been the issue.
Yeah. And then the second time they decide to meet is at like a greenhouse in some park.
I think it was where the implication was that I should look up the characters' names because I feel like it's getting confusing.
It's very bright, very well lit, and they like hook up in like the middle of the greenhouse. Like anyone could just walk in and see them.
So my understanding was that it's where...
And they have sex in a car.
It's Andrew, played by
Why
Russell Tovey.
Why just be in the car? Why be in the greenhouse at all? You know?
It's where he always took his partners. And this is the part that
I'd be
was...
like, well, I'm different. Pick somewhere else.
But that's kind of what Lucas was like trying to say. Like,
it's like you're just a fling of the week.
no, I mean Andrew was saying that.
Andrew
was saying that to Lucas.
Andrew is the older man.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andrew, I feel like he was pretty upfront and being like, this isn't gonna... Right?
I would say he was upfront, but he also should have been more emotionally intelligent because Lucas is like, yeah, that's totally fine. We can still see each other for now. But it's like so clear that he's about to fall madly in love with him. And it's a really bad idea to meet up again. Mm-hmm. And then they do. And of course, you know, he's absolutely devastated when he's like, this is the last time. We can't see each other again.
He was at the greenhouse?
Yeah. The car, specifically.
I mean, they full on have sex.
Yeah.
The second time. First time, they didn't really do anything.
No.
They had like was there like a peck? Was there at least one peck?
I think they made out. But that's what, I mean, it was very clear from that conversation, even though there's no chemistry, that they were setting it up. I mean, I guess that's why it's a movie. But I'm just judging Andrew's decisions. He should have been like, you know, I really like you, but I just think it's not going to work for me because I just can't see anyone more than once. That's my rule.
But it's the 90s. And it's probably hard to...
No, but Andrew does this all the time.
Yeah.
So
but he probably saw something in
oh, I see what you're saying.
Lucas that was like very...
hard to find. Charming.
Well, and also in a fucked up way, we discovered that Andrew actually is married, has a wife and children.
And is a pastor.
I forgot about that a little bit.
That's so important part.
And so he maybe sees like Lucas as like a child in a child in a way, like feels parental also.
Now that part, you're kind of freaking me out when you're going there, but
kind of, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Well, there was like a teacherly element because he kind of does teach him
that's a better word,
about sex as well.
Well, teachers should still not have sex with their students.
No, we're not condoning any of this, but it's kind of a call me by your name dynamic.
That's much better.
Now, is that also problematic because
Yes.
Timothée Chalamet is like 17 years old and
but on the
yes.
on the scale of problematism, it's problematic but lower.
Let's rank it. Let's not. I feel like we'll get in huge trouble if we do that with our many, many listeners. But I will say my favorite, the way this movie is so, in the end, great. In spite of, like, in the beginning of this movie, I was taking my notes. It's going to sound so mean, but I was like, oh my God.
You were really...
Because I was just like, I hate watching like a pretentious Sundance film that
it felt more like
executing well, but then I completely take back my unfair reaction to this
film. Delivered. The second half of the movie is very, very strong.
We keep saying that, but we're not saying why. You gotta wait till it
you
comes
won't
out.
believe the crazy things that happen.
But yeah, I don't know. I was in a really like negative mood while I was watching
So what
it.
shifted in the second half? Is that where it focuses more like Lucas has an ex-girlfriend who's still prevalent in his life to some degree. He has a rocky relationship with his family, which is very similar to The Bear. So much so to like the Christmas episode from season 2.
So this movie
might have been shot in the same kitchen.
This movie, the future part of the story is told during a holiday. I think it might be New Year's Eve. I don't remember. And everyone's cooking. The mom's in the kitchen. Everyone's coming and going. They're like, I forget they said it's in New York. Everyone's very New York, like
give us a New York accent.
Class vibes. I will have to call Rosemary Theveny for that. I can't.
Can you not even mimic it?
She never uses it.
You say orange.
Orange, you mean?
Yeah.
Orange, you glad? You didn't say banana? I don't know. I don't remember. That's one of my dad's sayings. I don't know.
It's a really common saying.
But sometimes the sayings...
Isn't it more of a joke?
Yeah. It's hard to tell sometimes. My dad has a lot of sayings that I think are common, then I find out that they're not common, and then I'm like, well, maybe this one is one of those ones that's not common.
Orange, you glad I didn't say banana?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty common.
Well,
On the range of jokes, that's one of the more common jokes.
knock, knock. Says who? You.
What's going on the couch over there today? Are you sure you're not having a heat stroke because you're wearing that coat?
It might be.
It actually isn't too hot.
I think it got cooler after.
Yeah.
But yes, it's in this kitchen, and they start showing scenes from it. I'm like, is this gonna be like The Bear? And oh boy, was it like the Christmas episode of The Bear, down to the exact kind of explosion that you might remember from that film, minus one car ramming into a wall. That did not happen in this movie.
But a body does go out the window.
Yes, it does.
I guess
no forks are thrown, but
no.
a body does go out the window.
I guess in The Bear, a body goes through the window, a car smashing into the house. But yeah, the second half was just more compelling because I think it focused more on like the emotional issues that Lucas was facing. He doesn't really know where he is in life, like down to his like sexuality. He just doesn't really know, and he has this like ex-girlfriend that he still really cares for. She's moving on with her life, but she's still like attached to him in a way. Like I think they still have like a voicemail that shares their...
He still lives in the apartment they shared.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And she is the only person he has told about his sexuality.
Right.
So we know that from earlier. These are the things we know early on in the movie. We find out that he's told her, and he said, you haven't told anyone, have you? We know that. We know that he has this letter that he's been reading that we assume is from Andrew. And we see him write the letter earlier and use his dad's name to sign it. I forget what his dad's name was. And then we also find out through very subtle lines of dialogue. Also, I think we weren't watching it with subtitles, or there were no subtitles, so I definitely missed some things. But he, the father was maybe I don't know, because sometimes they described him as such a good man, but then sometimes they described him as an alcoholic, or maybe he just had cancer. I don't really know what was going on with him, but he was very ill and then passed away, and it was very difficult on the family and his mother. Mm-hmm. So we have all these pieces of information that they're kind of revealed in different scenes. And then at the end, all of these things come together where Lucas goes to he tracks down Andrew, finds out he's a pastor.
So now, is it like in the story, 'cause it's been a while since we saw this, do the storyline catch it, like we're caught up with the story now?
I think perhaps it's, if I can remember, it's the church scene where they're meeting before he has the mustache, but it's kind of like the latest point in time.
Okay, before we are caught
interlaced with the final scene where he has the mustache in the future, and he's lost this letter and he's desperately trying to find it. And then they kind of up the stakes, and he finds that his cousin or someone has brought this new girlfriend to dinner, and she's like, "Oh wait, you used to date Casey," or whatever her name was. Huh. And you can see that she knows that Casey has told him the truth, has probably knows the truth about him.
Because she like leans over to her boyfriend's like...
But she's not telling him, but like you think that she probably is.
At that point, Lucas is like extremely understandably paranoid about everything.
And panicked. Then he has a panic attack because he can't find the letter. Then he sees his mom and the uncle or the cousin, whoever was, talking very seriously. The mom's distraught. So it seems like she's just found out the truth. He goes into the room and finds out that the uncle found the letter, gave it to his mom, and now they think that his dad was gay and had the secret lover, Andrew, because Andrew's written him this letter. And at some point, they begin to read the letter.
At dinner?
No, like...
upstairs.
It's more like overlaid. Maybe it's just... maybe you see Lucas reading it, maybe you don't, but you just hear Andrew's voice on what he wrote.
Yeah.
Oh, I wrote down his letter!
Read it.
I found solace in my family, my children. I want them to live truthfully and teach them everything I know. But it's not too late for you. I want you to find freedom. Maybe I'll be in San Francisco someday, and maybe you'll find your San Francisco too. And then he goes, "It's not Dad's letter, it's mine." I get chills even reading it again. And first, Lucas allows the mom to believe that it was the dad. Then he and his uncle have this start to have this confrontation. And it all culminates like, your dad was like kind of, he was always that way. What, like a wimpy. He says horrible things about his father, and Lucas begins to fight back. And then meanwhile, the letter's being written from Andrew, and he's saying things like, I have these children, I have this life, and my children are everything to me. I want to teach them everything I know. I've had to choose this way, but I hope that you get to choose differently. and maybe someday we'll meet in San Francisco, which is what they had said to one another when they were hooking up or like together. So it's very beautiful. And so then when he's like, he throws his uncle out the window and then turns to the rest of the family who's all staring at him, and he says the letter was mine. And then the movie ends.
It was really powerful.
Spoiler alert.
Aren't you glad I didn't say banana? That's how you should have ended that. And look at, you're in orange right now.
It was just so cathartic. So cathartic. So well done. And it makes me feel like the beginning of the movie is designed to annoy and frustrate you. Because that's why it works so well in the end. Because you're just like, oh, I think they did a lot with whatever budget they had. They did like a really solid job. And I think the story, I could see a world where they like punched up the like undercover cop element to it, but you just can't. It's just like too expensive, and you can't do it all. And so I'm glad that they were able to. That second half, I just think was so strong because you are really connected and locked into like Lucas, and you feel really like connected to him emotionally. And there's mystery, and you feel like his anxiety, and then you're so relieved and proud of him.
And that actor, who I forget the name, Tom Blythe,
he's great.
I saw the Hunger Games movie. I wasn't too excited to see it. That movie is way too long. But similarly, like near the end of that movie, it became really that was really interesting to me. But that's not what I'm talking about.
You heard it here first. Hunger Games, third part. What was it called? The movie? I don't remember.
The Ballad of Songbirds.
Oh yes, of course.
Fire or something. His acting, I thought, was really good.
I think he's really talented.
I think he's really talented, and I hope to see him in more things.
I do too. I thought he was great, and I felt like the entire film was really good. And I will say, they classified it genre-wise as a thriller, and I thought that was going to be because of the police element. In that sense, fails, but the ending was very thrilling. So I'm going to go ahead and say it was a thriller.
Yeah.
Of the emotional kind.
Yes. Regale us with another Sundance story.
Okay.
One that I've never even heard.
Well, I actually just went into my pockets here to see what was in here because I haven't really worn this coat very much.
What's in your pocket?
Well, there's a receipt, but that wasn't very interesting.
What's on it? What'd you get?
This is from the 1800 Park at the Yarrow Hotel. My server was Heidi. It was 4:14 p.m. February 1st, 2020. I paid $14 for an unspecified item. I don't know why I saved this receipt.
5 years ago. That was half a decade ago.
Scary. But that was not the interesting thing in my pocket. This was. I wrote in this little paper, 8 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. clicker. And it's also written here.
Is that the movie that you went and saw?
No. I was the clicker, meaning during the closing night award ceremony, party and announcement of awards, I had to, well, maybe it was actually the party after the announcement of the awards. I had to stand outside the door.
Check every person
and click it every time someone came and left the room. And as a result, because they had to have an accurate count of how many people were inside the room. And
then you de-click when they leave.
I think there was a way to do that. Yeah, I think it was you had to click one side or click the other side. And I had to stand for that long of time. And I love standing, but even I was like, this is...
How many hours?
8 to 1:30 a.m., 8 p.m. after probably a day of walking and standing. And then I had a partner who was supposed to help me or trade off. And I can't remember if it was a woman or a man. I don't remember this person. I just remember what they did. They're like, I think I'm going to go enjoy the party now. And I'm like, all right. And they never came back. They never came back ever. And they just were drinking the free drinks and I was standing there clicking away. But on the flip side, I got to see some celebs. Patricia Clarkson was the MC that night. So I saw her. I saw Ethan Hawke. And I saw the sister from Fleabag. I forget her name, but she was there. Oh. And most mysteriously of all, I could never confirm or deny, but there was this man that came while the party was in full swing. And he was wearing a big beanie and big sunglasses and he had long hair. He was pretty fit, but kind of old. And he had this bodyguard with him. And I just kept staring at him. And I was like, I think that man is Brad Pitt. And then his bodyguard was staring at me. And he was kind of stop staring. So I stopped staring. But anyway, I think it was Brad Pitt. So Highs and lows. Low, I didn't get to enjoy the party. High, I maybe saw Brad Pitt, even though I know we should probably actually have a negative opinion of Brad Pitt, so I shouldn't be that excited.
Moving on to our next movie, Twinless, which is, I think we are both most excited to talk about this movie.
Yes.
I have the premise pulled up, and I want to get your opinion on it.
Oh, don't read the whole thing. You know what I mean? Don't. I think it'd be more fun if we talk about it as we experienced it.
Oh.
Like, don't give away the things. What was it?
Well, what would I even say about this movie?
Say what its log line would be.
Man befriends another man in a therapy group for people who have lost their twins.
And it's sort of a bromance movie.
And it's a bromance movie.
So that was how it was described. And I was like, oh, it's Dylan O'Brien. I love that guy. Lauren Graham plays his mom. Oh my gosh. Lorelai Gilmore. Yes, please. This will be a nice, moving portrait of grief and friendship. It's interestingly marketed as a queer film. I wonder why. I guess the bromance element of it could be kind of like queer coded. Let's see what happens. What happened, you guys?
This movie is a ride. It is so good. I was like, Plainclothes, very good. But like Twinless, like I'm like shivers are coming down my spine right now. I'm like, this is a Sundance movie.
It was extremely well executed.
It was really, really well executed. Really, really good.
And they also similarly had was set in Portland, as Joe
I had just been there visiting, and they were going out to these landmarks. I was like, I was there. I was there. I was there.
It would literally be a grocery store. Joe
I was there. Well, and also,
yes,
just yesterday
at the grocery store,
Allison and I were at Lazy Acres, and we're near the buffet area, and James Sweeney walks by, and I did hit you kind of hard.
I was like, but you know what's so weird? Because I saw him at the same time you did, and I was like, I knew it. And it's because the day we watched the movie or the day after I went to Lazy Acres.
And you'd seen him there?
I saw him there, and I was sort of like, no, it's because the movie's about twins. It's not him. No way. That doesn't make any sense.
I'm like kicking myself. I'm kicking myself. I didn't say anything.
I feel like he would have been like kind of awkward.
But maybe. I think you would have appreciated it.
You're right.
I think we had like set like a time limit, you know, and be like, hi, like we just want to like really quickly.
Say we loved your movie.
Inappropriate. We loved your movie. Goodbye. And then just like go check out and like leave. I think that would have been fine.
Well, we'll probably see him there again. I've seen him there twice.
I know. I just was like so startled that it was him and there was like no build up to it. So I just, it was like literally like, he like turned and he was facing both of us. And I don't even know if he had like turned yet. I like slapped Allison's arm. I was like losing my mind. It was thrilling. But yes, he and he wrote this movie too. He did such a good job directing, writing, and he stars in it.
And acting in it. His acting was great.
And then like Dylan O'Brien is so goddamn charming.
He's amazing. And he played Dylan O'Brien, he played him and his twin. Now his twin was not in the movie very often because the twin passed away. But
and it starts out like that, right?
Yes, you don't meet the other twin until
like it already starts out with a funeral.
The
funeral. Is that how the movie starts? Oh, so like already starts off like it's just shoot. Sorry, it's such an exciting movie to talk about. Talk about.
We should go through
Dylan Sweeney's intro to the movie maybe first.
You mean James Sweeney?
Yes.
Okay,
so I'm so passionate. I just combined both of them.
Okay, so James gets onto the little Sundance pre-recorded thing, and his is really short. He's like, I directed this. I starred in it. It's a dark comedy. It's a personal story. It's a personal story inspired by my relationship with my own twin. He's alive for now.
And then he like stares at the camera and like doesn't stop staring at the camera. Probably holds on for like 15 seconds, but it feels like 20 minutes. And then it ends, and Allison we're like, that was.
I mean, what is that? What is that all about? And then the movie starts. It doesn't match the tone of that at all. I mean, there's certainly like jokes, but actually in the beginning, like the banter between them, I was sort of like.
There was a lot. It was kind of hard to hear actually a lot of the banter, and they just said it was such strange sense of humors, which I think kind of worked for that. You got used to it, and like obviously that's what bonds them together. But yeah, the movie starts out with like Dylan O'Brien and Heather Graham. They're at Dylan's twin's funeral, and
you see all the friends.
All these friends are like hugging them, and then there's someone in a very peculiar bob. It was like so strange.
But what really works about this sequence is that I was so struck by the fact that so many people were coming up to Dylan's character saying, you look so much like your brother. And I was like, wow, how awful for the rest of your life that you're going to have to experience that whenever you run into somebody who knew your brother.
Right.
You're kind of like this ghost in a way. And that really chilled me. So even though I noticed how strange that person was, I was like, oh, this is a dark comedy.
It's a dark comedy. It was like in like the corner frame, and it was like, oh, that's kind of.
But they did
and they
hug
hugged,
them.
and it was like, oh, kind of like an eccentric, but like random, like didn't. It was enough to stand out, but not enough for me to be like, what's going on?
So subtle. So then we go through this movie. In the beginning, it was better. It was better in the sense that it's more higher production value, slightly stronger writing. I wasn't as like, but it did feel kind of like a cloying, sweet, Sundance-y type movie. And I'm like, is there going to be any tension to this at all? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I like this.
And oh boy, was there tension.
But they start to have this conversation.
Well, don't they? Do I go into I do kind of just want to focus on some of the plot elements just because it is just such a
That's what I'm doing.
fun and rich movie.
Yeah.
The next scene, is it Dylan's in therapy for the first time?
The group. Yes.
And what was the line? The therapy leader, counselor, I like demanded that Allison rewind to like replay it because it was just so funny and weird.
She was really cheery, first of all, the grief support leader, which like did not
match.
You're like, this is for sad people.
Yeah. Sad people cannot be happy.
She goes, name a vegetable that starts with the same letter as your name and one thing you don't like about your twin. That's the icebreaker. She goes, I'll go first. I'm Charlotte. Carrot. I don't miss Claire stealing my boyfriend. No, I'm kidding. We won't go in a circle. He couldn't tell us apart. Still counts, right? I miss her laugh. We always laugh together. We talked about doing this Abbott and Costello routine, but I was changed. I don't
know.
So I said, I'll try stand up, and I'm about to test my jokes out on you.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and then, yeah. I mean, then she said, people always ask who's older. And I hated that. But who's older? I am now that she's dead.
That delivery was just so strange in a very hilarious way. And then I think that's when we're like introduced to...
They begin to speak. And I actually did write this down because it was an example of the dialogue I didn't like. Like, he goes to eat a cookie, Dylan O'Brien, and then we need to know the characters' names.
Dylan is Roman/Rocky. James is Dennis.
Okay. And Rocky is the passed away twin. So
yes.
Dennis pops up and goes, I wouldn't eat that. It tastes like balls. And then Dennis is like, I like balls, and eats it. It's gross. And I was like, what a weird thing to say. And then they very inorganically, Roman is not the smartest guy. He kind of recognizes that Dennis might be gay. And he goes, Rocky was gay. Was your twin gay? And then Dennis says no. And then they kind of talk about how weird it is that they're both a twin who has a sibling that's not gay. And I was actually intrigued, even though I was annoyed by how inorganic the dialogue was, I was intrigued because I am interested in the genetic question of where does gay identity come from? Like, how much is genetic, how much is environmental or whatever it might be. And I have read that twins do have it is more highly correlated that both twins will be gay. And then
that both will.
Not by but not by as much as you would think. Like, it's not a perfect, it's like 90% or something like that. And with identical twins, it's higher, but not might be like 60% or something like that. So it's not all the time. I'm very intrigued by that. But I thought that their interaction was kind of stilted. And then they go and they have sandwiches, I think.
Didn't they go to, they have sandwiches. Well, were they just going to grab coffee and then...
No, he's like, do you like sandwiches? Who doesn't like sandwiches?
No, but then Dennis gets a sandwich and then... No. Roman gets a sandwich and Dennis does not get a sandwich. Right?
I don't remember.
And then Dennis is like, it's kind of a bookend. Because...
Sort of, in that they keep...
Roman gets a sandwich and then Dennis is like, I shouldn't have eaten. Like, right before I came out, I don't know why I suggested this. And then Roman's like, oh, whatever, he eats a sandwich.
The bookend part, though, is that they keep throughout the movie will be asked a question and they keep saying different things.
Yeah.
But we can cover that a bit. But yeah, anyway, the movie was going along in this part, and then they start going to the grocery store, they start becoming friends, they're bonding, and I'm sort of like, okay, what's this movie going to be about, And
And I think while the movie was happening, I started
I was gonna say you should tell what happened to
stalking
you.
Dylan on social media. No, these names. I was stalking James on social media, and then people were tagging James in photos that spoiled an element of the movie. And I was like, ugh. The whole movie's just been spoiled for me.
I'm like, what do you mean? Like, there's a huge twist to this movie. I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And then all of a sudden it cuts to a scene that's technically in the past, and we see that Dennis is meeting up with Roman's twin, Rocky, also played by Dylan O'Brien. This character was only in the movie for like 25 minutes, but he was amazing.
I want his own spinoff. Dylan became a different person.
It was so cool.
It was still Dennis in some ways, but just he was able to just embody somebody like completely different.
Yeah, just confident, queer
stylish
vibes, everything. It was so good. And you're like, oh my. So your brain starts going into overdrive at this moment. You're like, okay, so Dennis was dating Rocky. This makes so much sense. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this.
And this is going to be really problematic that he withheld this from
absolutely Dennis. And then
Roman.
Yeah, and then my mind suddenly flashed back to the grief session. Or maybe that was later.
So they talk about a car accident?
Yeah, well, Dennis describes how he would share an emotion with the group, and he's like, I feel so guilty because it's my fault that my twin is dead. We usually got along so well. He gives all these like little stories about them. And then one time, I was coming into the airport, and my twin was supposed to pick me up, but he forgot, and I was really mean to him on the phone. I was screaming at him. He jumped in the car, raced there, got into a car accident, passed away. And I just thought that story seemed so strange to me because the way he described the bond was so positive, and I'm just like, I'm trying to imagine like if I landed and my sibling forgot me, I'd be really annoyed, but I wouldn't like call them up and scream at them unless something else was going on. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So the story felt like odd and off to me. So my mind flashed back to that, and then it just went into hyperdrive, and I was like, oh my gosh, he doesn't have a twin. And then I think I said that to you. He doesn't have a twin at all.
No. Did you say that?
Oh, at least I was thinking it. I think I did.
I don't think so. Because we have the whole... I thought we were caught up in just like the romance element and being alarmed by that.
I think my brain kind of went into hyperdrive. Because if you are... There's too many... If you... What are the coincidences that your twin passed away and you were dating a twin that passed away?
Yeah. But I mean, I was just focused on the fact that like Rocky appears as part of the storyline. Mm-hmm. So I like wasn't thinking of anything else outside of that. So like Rocky and like Dennis meet, and then I forget what is it about them that makes them so connected with each other.
Well, I don't know. I think they just have this nice... Dennis reveals that he always wanted to have a twin ever since he was a kid.
That's right.
Because he was really obsessed with the Olsen twin movie.
Yeah, that's where the reveal That's where the reveal happens. Is you're like, holy shit, he doesn't have a twin.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure I like...
But wasn't there something else that happens where it's like clear that he didn't have a twin? I guess that conversation that he has with Rocky.
Yeah.
But then what happens, like what makes... So this... When I was stalking James online, saw what he was tagged in, it was like an image of him and Dylan O'Brien's character like making out. And I was like, oh my gosh, what? And then it's like, oh my... And then as soon as Rocky appears, I'm like, oh, they end up with each other. But yeah, I forget what the meet cute was for them to connect. And then I thought I was going to turn to this whole romance movie of Dennis and Rocky like having this whole life. And I thought that was going to be the stakes, is then Dennis has to admit to Roman that, they had this, that they had been dating.
Yeah, but it's even worse because he just stumbles down the lie. Wait, so I wrote this down specifically, so I have the breakdown. So it's like they're seeing them at the grocery store, flashback to Dennis describing the worst thing he ever did to... It's so weird because he asks... Oh my gosh, the names. He asks
Dennis asks Roman,
what's the worst thing you ever done? And then Roman's about to say, when I was 16, I think he was probably going to say, my brother came out to me and I was terrible to him. But he doesn't say it because Dennis immediately cuts him off and tells the story about the airport and how it's his fault his twin died. Then we go to a new scene, and it's Dennis waiting at a restaurant, and Rocky shows up, and it goes I wrote down shock mustache. And then my brain,
Connects the plainclothes, the mustache flashback, flash forward.
And I was like, oh, it's a different time. And then I was like, oh my God, no, it's a twin. And then, because you had just told me there was a twist.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, it makes so much sense. Like the gay community is not like the most giant place ever. Of course they knew each other. You know what I mean? Of course that I was like, oh, it must make so much sense. And then the reason why Dennis was so into the idea of twins is because his mother took him and they moved to the States. His family is Japanese, and he was never able to go visit his dad in Japan. So he sort of imagined that he had a secret twin back at home and kind of created this life. And he was sort of a lonely kid.
And he's revealing this to Rocky as they're like hooking up, right?
Yes.
And so it's like alarming. You find out that not only is he with Roman's twin, but he also never had a twin in the first place.
Yeah.
And so then they hook up, and then you quickly realize like Dennis like is infatuated with this man, but like for Rocky it was just kind of a one-time thing. And like Rocky's very sweet, but like doesn't like Dennis like is kind of stalking Rocky, trying to like call him, text him. He's not getting any responses. He's at his place of work and he talks to one of his coworkers. He's like, hey, like I like double texted. Do you think I should like text a third time? And she's like, I definitely don't think you should. Or what?
No,
she's like kind of.
This is even funnier. You're gonna think this is so funny.
Okay.
So, what was also good with the movie, they had a lot of like fun side characters, and some of them end up being important, some of them don't, but they all feel like, oh, I know that person. You know what I mean? So one was the boss at his office. she like doesn't like to reveal anything about her personal life. Is very very like, don't talk to me energy. And so Dennis is asking her, you know, this guy and I had this amazing night, really connected, and he hasn't responded to me, and I've texted him 2 times. Like, do you think I should text him again? No, I really don't think you should do that. Or so can I ask you a personal question? No, please don't do that. Well, it's about me. Okay. Like, she really doesn't want to answer him, and then she's like, no, don't do that. He tries like to ask her 2 different ways, and then he realizes that he's never gonna get the answer he wants. Then he goes to the receptionist, to this like people pleaser times 1,000, and I was like, oh, that's me. He was like, well, what do you think I should do? Like, do you think there's like I should text him again? She's like, well, I don't know if you should do that, but I mean, he probably does like you. Like, it makes a lot of sense. You're such a great guy. Like, she's like very validating and tells him exactly what he wants to hear. But the thing is, I don't think Rocky actually sees him. Like, it's this one night stand. He doesn't answer. And it is implied by the brother that he's kind of a douche, Rocky. So I actually think he was kind of ghosting him.
He was ghosting him 100%.
But then he doesn't see him at the gym, but he goes to the gym to sort of stalk him. And then follows him out. Is that what happened? Or does he just see him on the street?
He sees him on the street, and Dennis is driving, right? He's driving.
Yeah, well,
and he sees Rocky, and then like he gets like distracted, and he almost like hits the car in front of him, right? And then finally, like Dennis pulls to the side of the road, and he gets really confident. He's like walking towards like Rocky and Rocky's friend, and he's like, "Hey."
He says, fuck you, Rocky.
Fuck you, Rocky. And Rocky's across the street, and he like turns around and sees Dennis. He's like, oh, like I like meant like to, you know, reach out to you. I was gonna text you. And he's like crossing the street, and then all of a sudden a car comes by and hits.
Okay, yeah.
And strikes Rocky. And that's like, you have like a twist. You have another twist. And then this third twist that he's involved in the death of it. Like, in hindsight, it's like, oh my, like it's like almost like too perfect, but like the way it all happened, it was just like a lot. Like, so I thought I got like one twist reveal, but it's like there was just like, it kept like heightening and heightening and heightening, so much so that you're like getting the context too of like Dennis, you're like creeped out by Dennis.
He's scary.
And it's like, how are they gonna make this protagonist like the good guy and understandable?
Yeah. Exactly.
A tall order.
Exactly. And you know what? You're making me remember that you were right. I don't think I put it together that he didn't have a twin, but I think once I realized he didn't have a twin, I was like, he probably killed him.
Involved in the death.
Because the story was that's what it was. Because the story was so weird about the airport that I was like, oh shit, he feels guilty that he killed the brother. And that's why he probably tracked down Dylan O'Brien's character in the first place.
On the other hand, I had no idea, and I like gasped, and I was like, in shock. I mean,
I still gasp. I'm just a very audible, like when I watch things, I get disturbed, but very easily.
And so it like goes back to the present day. Is that right? And now you have all this new information, and you're like, oh my gosh, Dennis, please get away. Or no. Roman, please get away from Dennis. Also, it's kind of been presented that Roman doesn't have the best control of his temper.
Yes.
And I think there's something that happened like the grocery store, like just like a little like fluke that like Dennis like did like a little, they have like their weird little jokes, but then he did something that like Roman really kind of just like was very reactionary to.
He didn't know what a lime was or something like that.
And then he's like, that makes me feel stupid.
Don't call me stupid. Which, I really felt like they did such a great, you so rarely see a character. I feel like everyone loves to write really smart characters who are great with words. And that movie has that in Dennis is like the quirky humor. The dialogue's very snappy. But then I love seeing a character who is not good with words, who maybe isn't smart in the traditional sense. Because I just think there's a breadth of that on film and TV. You know what I mean? And still to make them like a complicated, interesting person in spite of that, I just think it's really cool. But yeah, I mean, from there, it's just kind of like a slow burn. Like, when horror. Is it going to be, revealed? And then, I don't remember too much of like the plot going forward. I don't know. Like, I can summarize it really quickly.
One thing that stands out to me is the like picture for Twinless, like the promotional image for it is Dylan and James wearing Sims.
Oh yeah.
Green things. And that was great. That was like part of their Halloween costume, which is a significant scene in the movie. Is the people pleaser coworker invites Dennis to a party, and Roman and Dennis now are basically like inseparable. They
do everything together.
Doing everything together. It's like very like
it's like adorable, it's a twin bond basically.
Yeah, it's a twin bond. And they go to this party, and immediately Roman and this girl, what's her name?
My favorite character. I loved it because the thing about a people pleaser, right, is that they can intuit what the other person is thinking, feeling, what they want, what they need. And that's why they're good at people pleasing and bad at exerting themselves, right? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I just really love that her greatest flaw.
Her name's Marcy, by the way.
Oh, Marcy. Her greatest. Oh, and she was, I looked her up. She played the...
she was in The Fall.
And in Game of Thrones, she was the daughter. She was the Targaryen, the sister of Ned Stark, the one who gave birth to Jon Snow. Jon Snow's mom. She was Jon Snow's mom. But she's so crucial to the plot because she seems like this kind of jokey one. Wait, what's happening?
Sorry, Anna sent me a picture from 2011.
It's so cute.
We no longer. It's like images like this where I'm like, oh, the early 2010s were long ago.
You guys are really cute.
Sorry, what were you saying?
Marcy is super crucial to the plot because she seems like a character that's sort of a joke. Like she's the people pleaser, right? And that's like...
Sorry, she's sending more images. I'm going to text her and be like, how did you have access to the archives?
She's probably scanning them or something right now for your parents, something like that.
Okay, sorry. Marcy.
So she's really...
In Game of Thrones.
Yeah, she was Jon Snow's mom.
She was Jon Snow's mom?
I knew you didn't hear me when I said that. Yeah.
How?
She was the woman that died giving birth to Jon Snow.
Oh, okay.
The sister of Ned Stark. So that was pretty cool. But she's also very important to the movie.
So she invites Dennis, who brings Roman. Marcy and Roman immediately hit it off. There's this amazing... The cinematography in this movie was so...
Split screen.
Amazing. As soon as they go to the party and they break away, Dennis goes to grab a drink. Roman gets connected with Marcy. Marcy and Roman go upstairs. And then Dennis is like walking around all awkwardly. And it's a split screen the whole time. And then as Dennis comes up the stairs, the camera on Dennis is like zooming out. And then eventually the split screen becomes one shot. And I was like, Allison, did you see what just happened? I was like, no. I was like, rewind again. So I made Allison rewind again. I don't quite see what's happening.
No, I did see it, but every time, so we rewound so far that every time I would like again lose it just at the same moment, I would like look down at my notes and I'd be like, oh, I missed it again. But it was really well done. And then basically what happens is Roman and Marcy begin to date, and then Des becomes the third wheel. But it was just really genius because they had this Marcy character who seems like sort of a joke character become essential to the plot. And then this part of her personality where she like is good at knowing what other people are thinking and feeling that makes her kind of a weak character. It makes her the strongest character because she deduces that Dennis is lying and tells him, I know that you're not telling the truth. I remember the things you said at work 'cause I pay attention to people. I asked so-and-so from high school. You mentioned they went to high school with you. You don't have a twin. You have to tell Roman about this.
And it's played like her acting is so well done because you highlighted how she's a people pleaser, which I don't know if I would have identified, but you were like, even when she's like confrontational with Dennis, there's still like this, like you can tell it's like really painful and hard for her to do. And you can sense how uncomfortable she is doing this.
Yeah.
This isn't like someone like, you're finally getting your comeuppance. I knew this was, no, she's like very like sensitive and it almost seems like painful for her to like tell this to Dennis. Like she's like so uncomfortable and she's so uncomfortable with the situation and she like gets this like big moment, but she has to remove herself from even seeing Roman because she doesn't want to be the one that tells this news to Roman.
Yes.
So she starts avoiding Roman.
And then he's confused.
And then, Roman's confused. And something that had happened earlier in the movie is it's filmed in Portland and Roman and Dennis, when they're like bonding, they go and see a Kraken game up at Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, which is the hockey team in their stadium. And they like have this like really, they like have a lot of fun. They like drink a lot and then they like rent a hotel room. They, hang out in the hotel room, just like bond there. But the first time they go to a Kraken game, they're on the rooftop and someone under their breath mutters like queer or homo or something like that, some slur. And Roman, who we had heard earlier in the movie, had hinted that he wasn't so accepting of his brother, like seems to really react to these group of boys. He's like, what'd you say? And then like
they fight.
They fight. And then you see like, not only like does Roman have a temper, but he can like take down
He can be violent.
people and be violent.
Yeah, I think after that's when he tells more about how he was not supportive of his brother originally.
Yeah, probably when they drink, they are like in the hotel room and they're talking about it.
And then, but then also it's kind of giving you that emotional insight into Roman, but it's also giving you like, it's adding intention to the plot. You're like, oh, when Dennis does tell him, there's a chance this is gonna end very violently. I feel like the ending, he does confess, and it obviously destroys their relationship. Worked pretty well, I thought.
Well, I mean, so they return to the Kraken game later in the movie after Marcy confronts Dennis. They had plans to go see this game, and then after the game, Roman is working on the gym. And Dennis drinks a shit ton of alcohol, is inebriated by the time Roman comes back, and Roman gets on the bed and his like feet are out.
Oh no!
And then Dennis asks Roman if he can give him a foot massage, and just like, oh, that's kind of
weird,
unusual, but sure. And as soon as like Dennis walked over, I was like, he's gonna suck one of his toes.
Like, no!
Just the way the composition of the shot, like the toe is just like shining in the room. I was like, he's sucking that toe. And sure enough, like I don't know if like Roman's like back, like relaxing, just be like, oh, that feels amazing. And like Dennis just like lowers, and then finally just like sucks on Roman's toe. Is so uncomfortable, and Roman doesn't really know what's going on, and then like sees it, and then I think he like kind of shoves Dennis off of him. And then is that when Dennis is like on the floor, drunk, just got rejected, then admits what happened with Rocky.
He said, I don't have a twin. Dean isn't real. I started following you. I kept trying to tell you I was in love with your brother. I only knew him for a day. I was the crazy guy in the intersection, but you're my best friend. I don't want that to change. I don't know what to do. Do you hate me? That's what he says. But he's also very intoxicated when he says
and
it.
And then it escalates. And then eventually Roman gets on top of Dennis and like punches him in the face.
He later says to Marcy, I kept hitting him. I couldn't stop. Thankfully, they cut back pretty quickly and show you that Dennis is alive. You
only saw that one punch, but yeah, it was like super violent. And then it's like how we kind of sensed it was going to lead to this, but then it's like, how do you end this movie? And it made me think of the movie, of course it's not going to come to me, that Hulu movie with that girl where she lies about being at the Paris bombing.
I'm not okay with this.
I'm not okay with this.
It was like that.
Where it's like, how do you take something that, like, I mean, this took to the extreme because like it was like one, like targeting one person in a way, like so much deception with one person. Whereas like with the Paris bombing, it was kind of like terrible, but it was like a lie to like a group of people. Like I feel like, right?
I remember though there being something where she stole a story from
someone else.
Because remember at the end, the other character, she goes and she watches the other girl tell her story.
That movie is really good.
It was great.
I told Allison I keep doing this like unintentionally. I know.
I wonder if it's because
Twinning.
I mirror people.
You mirror me. I was at a work dinner and I like could not stop. It was so like cringy thinking about it. I was like, I'd say like any like positive thing I'd have to say, it's so good. Or I'd be like, yeah, it was great. And I like could not stop doing this fucking sign. I told Allison about this and now Allison started doing it too, unconsciously.
Well, I think so. Yeah, I'm like Marcy.
You are.
But you know what? If someone was lying to you like Dennis, I would go confront the other person on your behalf because I believe in doing the right thing.
Amazing. Thank you.
But also I'm terrified, so I don't know how I would do that. It'd be like very anxiety inducing. I do think the end was really perfect because they do meet up and they show that Roman, as he's with Marcy, they have a beautiful relationship, but he's lonely. Like he misses a friend. He needs his friend. So he decided, and it was very poignant. And she has her own life. She's not like necessarily so absorbed with one person. He's kind of more of a guy who kind of gets absorbed with.
Who are we talking about? I'm sorry.
Marcy and Roman.
Oh, Marcy and
At
Roman.
the end of the movie, that's why he reaches out because Marcy's sort of like.
She's like, you need your own life.
And I've got my own life, but they love each other, but she can't be his whole world.
Yeah.
So then they meet up for like a quick chat.
And had Dennis been reaching out and Roman had just been ignoring him?
I think so. I mean, I think it was not implied that was the case. And eventually Dennis asks if we would have been friends if we met under different circumstances. I don't know. I'd like to think so. But, and then Dennis is able to share some beautiful information that Rocky had told him about Roman, how Roman was the good twin who was like really...
one of them got hurt and then Roman like hurt himself too, so they could both
be hurt together.
So and
really
then like
sweet.
Roman and then Rocky, I guess in the story had it wrong, and then Roman like was like, oh, actually it was like a bowling ball or something like that.
Yeah.
It was really sweet.
And then the tag and the thing that you wanted to bring up is that then the waitress comes to take their order, and throughout the movie they've been asked questions and they answer at the same time, but they say different things. They're discordant. And this time they both answer with the same
That's right.
answer.
And it's no.
I kind of think that they would become friends after that. I don't know if you think the same thing.
I guess so.
I think it would be strange.
My initial reaction was that they were no longer friends.
I feel like it would be the kind of thing where
eventually
they would just kind of fall back together again.
You're right. Because you're seeing like Roman, like he's very like lonely, having
and so
lost
is
his twin, and Dennis is very lonely, and they like bonded through this. And while it was like there was a lot of deception, like I think they will forgive and become friends.
I think so. And I think earlier you were saying like they've made this Dennis character as creepy as possible. Like seems like a stalker. How are they ever going to make him empathetic? And the way that they were able to do it, I think, was to show just how lonely he was and how isolated.
Yeah. What was that scene where he was like watching a movie on the projector and he was quoting every line?
It was the Olsen twin movie. It was one of the. But yeah, I mean, I think it did kind of remind me of like creepy people I've known in my life who've done disturbing stalkery things, and I feel like you just have to have empathy for people who are like you wouldn't do, but then you also have to have boundaries. So it's really tricky because you got to feel bad for people who are doing things like that. Like there's got to be a psychological reason, probably rooted in isolation.
Yes.
But stay safe.
Stay safe. I'd say, as you have said, you are people pleaser. I'd say focus on your boundaries more than empathizing.
That's why I got
people.
into that troublesome stalking situation. Once upon a time. It was a long time ago, everybody. But.
A long time ago.
I will say, I haven't said it yet, but I will be remiss.
I kind of forgot until you just hinted at it.
As I was watching the movie, my adrenaline was pumping. I was amazed. I was riding high. But as it kept going, I'm like, this is reminding me of something. What is this reminding me of?
You had skepticism. I should take my own notes. I feel like 30 to like 40 seconds in, you were talking about some of the dialogue.
So I didn't, in the beginning, I did not. I thought, oh, this isn't going to be strong. And then once all those twists happened, I was like, oh, I'm locked in. This movie is not what I thought. This is going to be great. And I was pretty locked in.
And then you're like, wait, does this movie have its own twin? Because this seems really familiar.
Yeah, but it wasn't like, it was almost like in a deja vu way. It was kind of like, I'm like, what does this remind me of? Then I would get like lost in the plot and I would forget about it, but it kept like popping up like a ghost. You know, I'd be like, wait a second, this is reminding me of something. I'm like, no. And then I'd focus on the movie. And then it wasn't until it was over and we were talking about it that it occurred to me that the plot is extremely, extremely similar to the plot of the excellent TV show Dead to Me. So much so that in that TV show, in the pilot, 2 characters meet at a grief group for people who have lost their spouses. So not twins, but spouses. One of them becomes very, very into being friends with the other, has the same sort of manic, strange energy as Dennis. Come to find out that this woman, played by Linda Cardellini, is somewhat responsible for the death of Christina Applegate's husband. And that's why she decided to try to be close to her out of guilt. And she doesn't have a dead husband. And the person she's dating who has left her is a twin. So there is like a lot of similarity. And that does kind of like bug me a little bit. But I guess it's just, you're saying it's kind of like a soap opera-y thing to do. But then if what impressed us so much was the plotting, and then like I can point to another piece of media that has the same plotting, it does kind of bring me down a little bit. And I would say what allows me to still enjoy the movie so much is that I think it had like interesting things to say about grief and identity and friendship. And so I think it was telling a slightly different story. But then again, Dead to Me is also about grief and friendship. It's kind of like the male version of Dead to Me, I guess. But I just think it's interesting that I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that they're like very, very similar plots.
I mean, I'm not a writer. And so when you told me that, I like wasn't as bothered by it, but I think that's interesting that you're saying that we're like are so impressed and focused so heavily on the plot and the fact that it does have strong ties to the plot of Dead to Me.
Whether that's intentional or accidental or coincidental, I don't know, but yeah. It just is interesting. It'd be like if I were to write something, and I mean, we're inspired by what we watch and read all the time. And so there's always going to be shared DNA, I think. Like we can't help but write what we've witnessed or experienced. But I do think like if I were to write something and then it was to have those plot elements, I would know that I was taking it from Dead to Me. Do you know what I mean? And I could see myself like sometimes you're like, like 2 friends and one of them is pretending to be a friend for a certain reason. Like you might be like, I'm really inspired by that and I want to write a story that has that element, but to have all of the elements, I think is the part that's weird to me. And I'm not saying that I'm not saying it was plagiarism. I just think that's the part that like for me when I'm writing, if I'm taking something or inspired by something else, I don't take the whole thing. You know,
they take the whole thing.
It's just really similar. Just pointing it out there. Yeah. I'd be curious like when the movie comes out, if anybody else sees those similarities, and like it'd be cool to see like a compare contrast, like kind of analytical take, because like what is it saying about grief? What are these movies saying about grief? And like looking at them together, maybe I could even do that for a video essay. I'm sure it'd be interesting.
It would be interesting. It's getting hot in here. All right, how do we end this thing?
Let's see. So yeah,
ranking
I think
these 3 movies that we saw.
Oh.
What would be your order?
I would do Twinless, Plainclothes. It's not, I feel bad because a documentary is a different medium. So I want to rank them in that sense. Like I feel like it'd be like Twinless.
But I feel like I've seen documentaries that have really moved me and compelled me. And I do think that while this is really good, I feel it was very respectful as much as it could be. Maybe that's, I don't know. I think not having Sally here today like really hurt it, which is, you can't help that. But I do wish like there was more focus I don't know. But it's strangely enough, Sally was like such a hard person to get a window into what she was really thinking. This movie, because it was like limited in that sense, I still felt like I was on the outside. And then so when I'm getting those hints of like Sally's sister being like, oh, like we're both queer and we never talked about it. I'm like, I don't know about that. Like, let's hear more from the sister. Getting more insight from like Tam, even like, I just wanted to hear more.
Yeah. More emotional content.
Or even like learn more about their lives in a strange way and get some connection there. But I just felt like I felt like I was still on the outside by the end of the movie.
I guess that's fair.
But it was still really well done.
Yeah. They all were really good. And I feel like each one had moments that like were stirring and memorable. And I forgot that I know exactly what we can end on. Something else crazy happened related to Twinless. So we decided you have a window to watch these movies in.
Oh, yeah.
You got the links and you could watch them between, I think it was like January 30th and February 2nd.
And we had a lot of movies that we had to watch.
Like an hour after we started the movie, they took it off the platform and no one else was able to watch it and they got refunded. Or maybe they were able to pick another movie. I don't know.
And so we were like randomly choosing what movies we were going to watch. And we watched Plainclothes first, I believe. And then we were like, which we watched? Sally or Twinless? Let's watch Twinless. And if we had not watched it
I know.
that day,
which would have been a tragedy.
Even at that time, we wouldn't have, if we would watched it at like 7
an hour
p.m.
later.
Yeah, it would have been taken off.
So I feel very fortunate because in spite of my little hot take there, I do love the film and it was my favorite out of all of them.
It's really well done. It's just like Plainclothes, you're like really well done, but you're like aware of like
the stitches in the seams.
The stitches in the seams. That's a great way to put it. Whereas like Twinless was just like so polished.
And that's why now I'm like going to overcorrect, but I'm really telling you that's why, even though this like plot element, like the plot is what made me so excited, but I think I was able to get so excited about the plot because everything else was so high level. The acting, the directing, the look of it, the way they used Portland. And it seemed like they didn't use those many set pieces, but they made it feel like a huge, gigantic movie.
Yeah.
And because of that, I had no quibbles with the story. Like the other movies were talking about the story and being like, that didn't make sense when that happened. That didn't make sense when that happened. That's not what's going on here. It's more like I'm able to like think about it in connection with other film and TV.
And then so the issue is like, it's like, well, yeah, you have the luxury of these like building blocks. Are you acknowledging that you have these building blocks to create such a wonderful story movie that I really enjoyed watching?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter to me. It's more like it only matters to me if someone's gonna not be honest about it. And that's really...
Do we have any... I feel like...
I don't have any quotes from him. I could look, though. Dead to be premiered in 2019. And James began working on the script in 2015.
Really?
He started working on the script in 2015. I just broke up with my boyfriend, who was an identical twin. So that might have something to do with it.
I really hope that Sundance continues to release movies online for people that can't attend. Alice and I, in each our own ways, had opportunities to go to Sundance, and it was very wonderful. We also were thinking earlier we were going to consider volunteering at Sundance to attend this year, but
let's do it next year.
Impossible, yeah, next year.
Well, everybody, this is Queer Cinema Catchup, the podcast where we talk about movies, television, and film through miscellaneous topics.
But we do bring up miscellaneous topics during our episodes.
We do. But it's all queer because we're queer.
All these were queer-related movies.
They were.
We did seek them out. It wasn't just by chance.
Yeah. Subscribe on YouTube. Listen to us wherever podcasts are found. Check us out on every social media platform that you can think of. We're probably there.
And at this time, I think we have Severance minisodes going on.
Woo!
Yellow Jackets minisodes. And we have White Lotus minisodes coming out.
We got all the content.
So please check out, engage, like, subscribe. And write us emails at queercinemacatchup@gmail.com.
Thanks so much.
Goodbye.